there is something called respect for the teacher. Okay. Even if I was very critical of my other teachers in school and whatever, the respect didn't diminish.
Right.
That is always there. So you follow your teacher. So I went back to Guruji and he looked at me and, that was, I can't forget that look, because it was such a straight stare. He says, and he's looking at, I don't know, one of the trustees, Sam, or I don't know, Barjoji, those senior teachers there. He says, she stopped coming. I said, yes, but I thought, but Father Joe said I have to join back. He says, I know Joe, he's a good student, but you have to be regular. I said, yes, I will be regular from now. And that's how he took me back, very graceful of him. He could have just thrown me out because I had left without any notice. I didn't even bother to ask permission or even forget, ask, inform. I think so. That was how I was. And
Wow.
that is how when the impact of Iyengar. So that was my first class when I restarted with Guruji. Okay. And that class was the class of my life. I can never forget, because it was such an intense class. It was a backbending class. Okay. In those days, the month was, like phased out. Like first weekend when he would come, it would be more standing poses and then the inversions and back bends and forward bends and pranayam last week. So this was the pattern Guruji was following. Even today they follow it in Pune. So it was a kind of a backbending class, so to say, but it was so dynamic, so dynamic. I remember telling myself that I'm going to die, but I'm going to do it. I can't now give up, even if I die here, but I have to do. I don't know how I got that mental state, because I was not that type of a person. I was very laid back. Okay, if I can do it, fine. If I can't do it, it's okay. So this thought, because then it was a matter of my prestige, my ego, whatever you say. And it must have been at least 50, 60 backbendings in the class, minimum. I could be more, all kinds, Urdhva Dhanurasana, Kapotasana, Vipreet Dandasana, Vipreet Chakrasana, everything. And the best part is that Guruji was doing with us.
Wow.
Okay, remember at this point, he's 60 plus. And he is in the middle of the class demonstrating, then coming around, helping people a little bit, then coming around, scolding people, correcting people, then going back. Okay, and you can't catch up with his speed. And I'm 22, 21, 22, and he's 62 or thereabouts. I can't exactly remember. I can't calculate ages, but I'm saying, like, what is this? What is this?
Yeah.
So I said, no, this is shameful. I have to keep up.
Yeah.
So I did. And I walked back home with my legs very wobbly, and you know how your muscles are exhausted and fatigued. But I was in the seventh heaven. I was like, as if though my legs were shaky, I was still flying. Something in me was flying. So that why I'm able to tell you all this is because it was such a potent experience that I can never forget it ever in my life. It's a very strong memory. And that is, you can say that is when I arrived with BKS Iyengar. That the concept of Iyengar Yoga and what is BKS Iyengar set into me. Till then it was just, something I'm doing, and something I'm doing because I like it, and I'm doing because my teacher is asked me. So start teaching, start practicing. Okay, all that was fine. But this is how. So, of course, my first teacher, Father Joe, was a wonderful teacher, and I still have a lot of respect for him. And had it not been for him, I wouldn't have gone on to BKS Iyengar. And had it not been for his foundation, I wouldn't have, learned further here. So that's undoubtedly my foundation. But the transition came with Guruji. And then, of course, then just things just went on. So that is, I don't know how you call me a household name. I don't know which household, but I am my household yoga name for sure, because everybody then knew that, she will not compromise on yoga for anything. If there's any plan, then no, she will not come on Monday because that is her yoga day. So that was very clear. Weekends, like come. So there used to be, Mumbai is very known for getting flooded. So during the rains, once in a year, there has to be a huge flood because there is so much rain that our drains get blocked and the roads get flooded. And Guruji would come all the way from Pune to teach us, and there is no way that you should not go. So I remember actually walking through floods, wading through to reach his class. And that was not just because, we should do it because he should not feel bad. That was one part of it, but I wanted to. There was nothing on earth. So not only me, there were others along, young students, older students. There were so many people who just wouldn't miss it for anything in the world. So come rain, snow, storm, shine, whatever it is, you go because you're so looking forward to it. So I don't remember a point of time in my life when I so look forward to my weekends for this. Like mostly weekends would be like partying or going somewhere, but this was my weekend in my early 20s. So this is how it just progressed.
That's amazing. Well, I was going to ask you about, if you can recollect some of your deepest or strongest or most profound memories of studying with Guruji. I think
I
you
just
kind of
told you
shared
one.
that. Yeah, I know you've already shared one.
Told you one.
Do you
And
have
I
another
knew
one?
that I personally feel that was my test. I'm sure that he was not doing it for me, but I thought this class is my test. He's doing it to test me. That is how I felt the personal bond with him. It may not be the case. That may not be in his mind at all. This is my mind. Okay, so the other memories are, of course, the first memory of going to Pune. So I was taken to Pune for, the celebrations by the senior teachers. They were very kind to say, come along, we are going. So that was my first visit to Rimi. But after that, I heard other friends in class, like me, youngsters, saying that we went and did an intensive in Pune. I said, what is that? I never heard about this. No, Guruji teaches an intensive for 3 weeks, and it's very intense. And they would come up with stories of how intense it was and how they, couldn't walk the next day. When you're young, those are the things that matter to you more. I think it's more about the body. So I said, I also want to do it. And then I was still a student at that time, and finances were not like very easy to have because I didn't want to ask from my parents. So they said it costs a certain amount of money, and I said it's pretty expensive. I don't think I can afford it because paying that fee and then staying in Pune. So I said okay, and then I happened to finish my my graduation, and I received some prize money because I'd done well at the university, and I got a gold medal and some prize. And that prize amount was exactly the amount I needed to do the intensive. So I wrote to Guruji saying that, and by the way, by that time I was teaching in a school, yoga, because again, my Father Joe said, go and teach in the school. So my first teaching started with children in school. And those are other stories. But you know how I was totally overpowered by those little boys running into my class. But anyway, so I wrote to Guruji saying that I'd like to join your intensive and I'd like to come in this month of Diwali, October break, because I have holidays and I can spare the time. So he wrote back saying, you have to come when I ask you to come. You can't decide. I said, okay. He had his reasons probably later, and I realized that there were no intensives in, certain months of the year because the Westerners would come for the intensives are meant for Western students, not Indian students. So Guruji used to teach those. The regular Indian classes for Indians were taught by Geeta ji and Prashant ji, but Guruji used to teach these intensives 3 weeks, and then he would rest for 2 weeks and another intensive would come, things like that. So they had their chartered plan and timetable, which I didn't know. And then he wrote to me sometime, I think in January, that there is a group coming in February from Manchester and there's one place, so you can join. So that's how I got the permission. And I told my school where I was teaching that I'm going. I said, oh, but you can't go in the middle of the term. I said, I don't care. I said, my guru has called me and I have to go. They were kind enough, I think, and I just went off. So this was my first learning experience at Rimi. And that again, little overpowering because, that hall. So now that time it was not so big, but in those days, it was pretty large hall with so many, people they were the group mainly from Manchester and some others from Europe and all unknown faces. And then Guruji with his fire, and then Geeta ji, Prashant ji in attendance, and those intensives were really, really so powerful. So these are my first memories of learning in Pune. However, I must put in here because that your next question will come to that about breath. And I must say here that as much as I enjoyed the asana classes, I enjoyed as much or perhaps more the pranayam classes. And that was right from the beginning. Again, I have to thank Father Joe for that, because he did not wait to teach us pranayam till after 3 years, as you have some funny rules in the Western world. I remember from the very second month when I started, there was something called Shavasana that everybody knows. And in that Shavasana, we were taught to watch the breath. So my introduction to breath started from the very onset, even before I joined BKS Iyengar. And before I joined BKS Iyengar, I knew about Ujjayi, Viloma, Nadi Shodhana pranayams. All of them were introduced to me by Father Joe. And we used to practice them regularly. We used to have morning practice sessions, I remember, which he so kindly used to conduct for us without any fee. And we used to go. And that was another thing, getting up at 6 in the morning was not on my agenda. But somehow, I managed to get there. And those days, now, of course, it's not like that. And so my introduction to pranayam and breath started right on the onset of my yoga learning. And I would advise that that is how it should be for everyone. Okay, that beginners, now the reason why Guruji must have set a rule that beginners should not be taught pranayam was because teachers would learn for three weeks in Pune and then go back home and teach, and they didn't have the connection, regular connection. And he must have been apprehensive that, what are they going to teach? They will teach something wrong. And he knew that something going wrong with the breath was to be reckoned more than something going wrong with the body. When something goes wrong with the body, you can set it right easier than something going wrong with the breath. And if something goes wrong with the breath, then something goes wrong with the mind. Okay. And therefore, those psychologists, so you go the wrong way, you get over enthusiastic, you overdo your pranayams, and then there can be problems even here. Okay, like somebody once said, like a short circuit. So he was apprehensive of that, and therefore he put sanctions that you should not be teaching beginners pranayam. Teachers who are teaching introductory courses should not be teaching pranayam. They're not qualified to teach, so on and so forth. So all those rules were made more for the Western world. They didn't apply to us here. Okay, because here the teacher I learned was constantly in touch with Guruji. I was constantly in touch with my teacher. So that Guru Shishya Parampara, the relationship between gurus in a chain, continued to exist. So nothing could go wrong. We were very protected. We were very insulated. If there was a problem, we could always go back and say, this is how I'm feeling. And I would be helped out. But because Guruji, there was so much distancing, he could not take that chance. That is why those limitations were put on the teachers. And after that, it became like God's word. It's not meant to be like that. In time, when there's maturity, things should change. It should change. BKS never meant it. Guruji never meant it that this should be a lifelong, eternal, rule as such. It was at that time. Then communications were difficult. Even phone calls were difficult, long distance, right? So if somebody wrote a letter from your country to Guruji saying that, I've done this, I'm practicing like this, and this is what has happened, which he would get letters from students, and they would be doing all the wrong things, which would alarm him. And then he would say, stop this practice. And the letters would take a month to come to you. So today we have good communication. When you have good communication, then you shouldn't stop. You should, go ahead with your teaching. There should be less fear as such. So I want to say this, that one of the reasons why I'm focusing on breath and I'm able to, and it comes so naturally to me, is because right from the onset, I understood what is breath, that breath is a very essential component. You cannot do your asanas without breath involvement, and you should have pranayam as an essential component. So coming back to the intensive, there would be sessions in the afternoon. Afternoon sessions were pranayam sessions, and I look forward to them as much. Whereas I know some people, now it's a pranayam session. They're not so interested. But I was not one of those. I just loved it. And even since then, I'm talking about the 70s, I had a regular pranayam practice along with asana practice. It was always there. It was not that pranayam once a month and the rest of the day asanas. It was not like that with me. If I would get up, if I learned to get up early in the morning, then I would sit and do some pranayam, after 1 or 2 asanas to prepare myself. And then I would go for the asana practice. And this was also taught by Guruji, that pranayam should be practiced when you are fresh, so morning is a good time. So I used to explore that. Okay. So I that's my confession, that the reason why I associate so much with breath is because I was introduced. See, if you're not introduced to a person, how do you get familiar to a person? Okay. I introduce myself to you know who I am. And now we get to know each other. I was introduced to the breath and pranayam right at the onset in my yoga learning. And that is how, over so many years, that friendship between me and my breath was developed. So